Welcome back to Parables in Pastiche. It is me, Urban. I'm joined with my two guests, my two hosts, Devin and Prophet, with our guest today, Rachel Sunshine, aka Maiden Anarchy. And we've got a good show for you today. It's been a while since we've done a show. We've had some issues arise in life and things like that happen. And last time we had planned to do it, there was a big snowstorm in Colorado, so that kind of took her entire power grid off. But I'm pleased to introduce Rachel to you. So your mic's mute if you want to go ahead and unmute it, and you can introduce yourself.
All right. Thanks so much, Josh. I appreciate you guys having me on here. Should be fun. A lot of the interview here today is going to come from my actual followers on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as Rachel Sunshine. You can also follow me at Black Flag News and blackflagnews.com. Thanks to Urban over here. I am a 22-year published legal analyst. I publish usually on constitutional law and how the courts have impacted the Constitution. I wrote a short little pamphlet. I call it a little ditty, actually. It's something that would be passed around when you're at a bar hanging out with your friends on a Friday night to let them know, hey, I just want to let you know that we're living under tyranny. It's called How Medical Tyranny Murdered the United States, a great conversation starter for a light night at the bar. It's a historical legal analysis of how the courts and the legislatures have actually worked around the Constitution to enact medical tyranny and what we've experienced for the last 5 years or so. And I also write locally for the Pagosa Daily Post on local analyses as well as national analyses. For example, I have written about Trump trying to be taken off of the ballot for them redefining insurrection here in Colorado. Boy, it feels really awesome. I'm proud to be a Coloradan when they're redefining law. And now currently do a Black Flag News on Urban Odyssey, where I have had a better privilege of writing because there's not any type of censorship from an editor. So I've been free to actually write about judicial review, write about the actual despotism that is going on here. And hundreds of people have read all of that. And I really appreciate everybody's support. Thank you.
Yeah, we're really glad to give you that platform. I mean, you've done me the favor as far as I'm concerned. I mean, as long as you contributing something of value, I don't care what you write. Truly, I don't. But it's great to have you here. It's really nice to have somebody of your experience and intellectual level to talk about these things with, because we like talking to smart people from all over. I think that's one of the ways you can learn. But yeah, I think your pamphlet, your small book, "How Medical Tyranny Murdered the United States Constitution," by Maiden Anarchy, AKU. So just give us a general overview of that. Let us know what were you writing about. What was the idea behind it?
I actually wrote it in a singular day and didn't
Oh,
even take time to edit it because it was so timely in regards to people were like, how the hell did it happen that we are able to close down businesses? How, like, people are forced to stay at home. Basically, they created Jew ghettos, just making you stay in your home. Like they imprisoned you in your home and it was illegal to go to the damn park, you guys. Like I literally was going to Walmart with my children to stand in line to buy toilet paper, right? And people were threatening me with CPS. I can't believe you're taking your children out
Jesus.
of public. I'm going to call the cops on you, right? Just the sheer absurdity of everything. And then it got to the point where parks were being closed, right? And like two by fours were being drilled into basketball hoops so that you couldn't play basketball. Like, how did we get here? That was insane. And I sat here for like 4 months just knowing the answer and not saying anything, basically because I was being a giant pussy. And I didn't want to write anything that would get too much attention. But it came down to like, I don't even know what it was, something minor during this medical tyranny where I was like, I can't take it anymore. I have got to let everybody know what is going on. So, and what happened here for medical tyranny is actually why I chose not to go to law school. So when I was 19, I found out that the courts gave themselves the power of judicial review in one of their own court hearings. So the most important power of the Supreme Court, the most well-known power, is not actually in the Constitution. They just
Marbury versus Madison, correct?
Marbury v. Madison in 1803. So from that point, if I was going to ask somebody, what do you think is the number one issue the Supreme Court hears for all of their cases? Would it be like First Amendment rights? Would it be like the right to due process? What do you think it would be? And if somebody were to ask me, I would tell them it's judicial review. The Supreme Court loves to expound on their own found power of judicial review. So almost every single one of their cases that they take, they use the power of judicial review and expound on it. So instead of having judicial review where they're allowed to look at and investigate the wording of the Constitution, it went from that to being able to interpret the Constitution. Then it went to redefining the Constitution,
Yeah.
went to redefining all of the laws in real time. So the Supreme Court since 1803, and they also have the power to choose their own cases. So they accept and deny a case based on their own agendas. Okay, they accepted a case back in 1905 called Jacobson v. Massachusetts. And before 1905, the definition of health, as we know it, the legal definition of health, as in Black's Law Dictionary, edition 1, health says it is an absolute right to be secure in your person, papers, and effects for the enjoyment of health, meaning health was an absolute right. Now, the word absolute is a legal verbiage. It means outside of government interference. So health was an absolute right for a person under the Fourth Amendment. And then in 1905, the Supreme Court decided that they were going to redefine health to be able to be regulated under police powers and the general welfare powers of government. So basically, they decided we get to have complete control over your health. And as time has gone by since 1905, they've expounded on the expansion of general welfare. So now it basically encompasses everything, including if you're an essential worker or not. Like, yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. And they expounded on health. For example, health has to be regulated at the state level. And then they give 10 powers here, for example, in Colorado, of what a health department is supposed to do. They don't actually define health. So health, the way that it's been used to expand government powers, doesn't have a definition anymore.
Yeah, all this legal stuff. The main issues that I see is that the Supreme Court, there's no overview for them. So if they could hypothetically do something technically wrong, and there's no one could. They're the absolute. I mean, they could just do whatever they want. I mean,
Kind of. Okay, they can. I don't think that they want to. Okay,
it's still very partisan, right? It's still very partisan. Like Supreme Courts are beholden to their party and their agenda of interest. It's not necessarily individualistic at that point.
Okay, so as a professional, I'm not a writer. My writing is just a hobby, actually. And usually I give my writing out for free. What I do as a profession is I'm a strategic consultant. I'm a certified Scrum Master and also a certified human rights consultant.
You have to tell us more about Scrum. I don't know what that is.
Okay, I'll get to that in a second.
Sure.
Okay, so when the government was created, there were absolutely people who had strategic plans in mind for the government. And as generations have gone on, those strategic plans have been put into place. They've been expanded. So Scrum is basically when a team gets together and they put somebody in charge of what a stakeholder wants. Okay, so let's say I'm the people, the stakeholder. I want as limited government as possible. We hire somebody who's a product owner or project manager to come together with a team that they build. They're called developers and scrum masters. And that team is supposed to actually build what the stakeholder wants under the management of the product developer. They actually create a working together agreement. That would be the Constitution. The Constitution is our working together agreement where we agree to delegate our sovereign powers as individuals to a third party entity, and we named it government.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then government is supposed to develop the most efficient and most practical products for us as that team. Okay, but they stopped doing that. They became the stakeholders. So the product that they develop is for them as their own stakeholders. And we somehow have been left out of the equation, despite the fact that their powers legitimately come from us signing a contract together. So because I'm sorry?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to I not to get like crazy esoteric and expand on it, but I do think that it's contractual law and all the things that we sign in our Social Security and all the things that we sign day to day for personal corporations with the terms of agreement Satanism, right? Where we just all that stuff. But I think that it is deeper than that, essentially.
Hold on. But what is Satanism? Satanism is just leading somebody down a deceitful or false path.
Of course. Yes,
okay? Just want to clarify.
Yeah. And this deceitful path that everyone is on, government is God now. It is beyond the contract. It is like what is worshipped, and it is similar in the idea too, where the popes, right? Like it's now the intellectual bourgeoisie who are making and calling all the shots for what democracy is, for what our judicial and political system is. It is simply being gatekept in a different tier like it was in the past. It's the same, fractal of expression of government. But I think that was a thing that I really wanted to outline. Like the government has transcended the contract to being what God is. We don't have democracy in any capacity, and people believe that we have democracy.
I call this extra constitutional because there's not technically a legal verbiage for this. But when the courts, when the legislatures, when the executive branch is working outside of their very limited powers, we have to keep in mind the 10th Amendment says any powers not explicitly enumerated to the federal government are left to the states or the people. So there is a closed contract here. There's no leftover powers for them to take over. They're working extra or super constitutionally. They're working outside of the Constitution. Everything that they do outside of the Constitution is void. How is it void? Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution is the supremacy clause of the Constitution. It says that no other law is above the Constitution. So if they're working outside of the Constitution, everything that they do is void.
Yeah.
I don't know why we're still allowing them to do that, but because everything that they do now is outside of the Constitution, that means the Constitution itself is illusory and void. There's no mutual agreement. There's no meeting of the minds. Sure. So like Devin wants one word to mean something. I want it to mean another. We go to a judge who technically doesn't have the power to figure out what it is. Instead of saying that the law is arbitrary and overbroad and void because it needs to be defined, the judge says, you know what? I believe that power belongs to me and only me. And I'm like the supreme ultimate being about this. You can't even question me or anything that I do. But that's not exactly factual.
It's a form of solipsism, that there's no objective truth.
Exactly. And also it leads to a very closed circular power structure, which is, as we all know, defined as despotism. Yeah. Despotism is when somebody is outside of the control of a constitution, the laws, or their opponents. So when you don't have any way to stop these despots from doing whatever they want to do, we are actually living in despotism. I would say we've been living in despotism since 1803, since Marbury v. Madison was passed, and the legislature didn't do anything about it. So the legislature is supposed to check the courts. They could have very easily just passed an act that said judicial review is not an actual power of the courts, and this court case in particular is going to be voided. Because it does not follow the Constitution. They didn't do that. As a matter of fact, they were like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing power you granted to yourselves. Now I'm going to pass a legal law, and you know what? Here's a few extra bucks. Go buy yourself a yacht.
Yeah.
And you just tell them that it's the law of the land now.
Well,
And that's what
Citizens
happened.
United helped that one. Citizens United, because corporations are entities and they have freedom of speech.
Oh, we
That's a
don't even
joke.
have real elections here anymore. Are you guys crazy?
Well, guys, money is speech. You guys are
That's right.
being dumb. Money is
Mhm.
speech. Come
That's
on, you
right.
guys
I
are
actually
being
wrote
silly.
an article about this. I believe it was in 2016. The title was Black and Gray Markets Are Actually Free Speech.
Yeah.
And it's
I like
because of
that.
Citizens United. Citizens United says money is speech, then I have the right to associate with people and I have the right to purchase their products without any government interference whatsoever because it's a free speech
There
issue.
shouldn't be KYC then. Why is there KYC? That would be infringing upon unrightful search and seizure then, right? I mean, if money
Oh,
is free.
absolutely. And
But-
they're trying to figure this out on a constant basis. And I'm just like, you know what? Buy my unregulated edibles, you guys, right?
I have a question. Maybe you can answer
Black and
this.
gray all the way. Yeah.
So, one thing I heard, I think it was on one of Tex Mars radio programs, he had mentioned that the framers of the Constitution, for the most part, did not want to give us certain rights. And then
no.
somebody demanded that the only way we would ratify the Constitution is with the Bill of Rights.
That's right. They could not get the Constitution ratified without the Bill of Rights. So it would not have gone into effect.
But they didn't want us to have those powers originally.
That's right. As a matter of fact, a lot of court cases back in the day, some still now, have something called a dictum, which is just a preface to the court case. Now, back in the day, they didn't obviously have the internet. So when Dobbs was decided a couple years ago and it was breaking instant news, they didn't have that back in 1803. So in 1803, Supreme Courts and their seasons, they have a season from like October to June, and then they take several months off because it's just so exhausting creating new
they're
law.
very hard. They work really hard. I mean,
they work so hard, you guys, usurping our rights. Anyway,
harder than the oil field.
So basically, they actually would publish a book, a very expensive book, with all of the court cases for the season. And in the dictum for Marbury v. Madison, a reporter states that the court said that there were legal holes and gaps. That's how they phrase it. Legal holes and gaps in the Constitution, to which the court said the Constitution could not have been ratified if they had looked at every single legal issue. So they left all of these legal holes and gaps purposefully, the founders did, in the Constitution to be decided by the courts later. So as you can see, it was a purposeful, strategic plan to give the courts these super extra constitutional powers. And then, the legislature just never corrected it. The executive never corrected it. We, as the people, never corrected it. We never actually, like as Devin said, we revere them. Like, oh my gosh, how could you even seriously question judicial review, Rachel? Like, you have no idea. I've had people say that I am treasonous and deserve to be hung for discussing how judicial review
not
is
the people in Washington. The people in Washington are fine, but you are dangerous. Stephen Roberts on Facebook, he says the only men and women that have rights are nationals, state nationals, and American nationals. Everyone else are slaves or serfs.
Yeah. No, that's what's going on here. Particularly, you have a justice system that gets to define law new in your court case in real time, like they did with Trump, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You have executives who can redefine law now and they won't be questioned. So that was my first article for you, was Joe Biden burst through the door of despotism.
Yep.
And they say that preemptive pardons actually exist, but there is no verbiage like that in any jurisdiction, any jurisprudence at all in America. You can't find it in any legal dictionary. You can't find it in any court case, and you cannot find it in any legislation. It does not exist.
There is a place that does exist, and it's in the Monopoly box. They called the get out of jail free card.
Oh, it's in
That's
the
good. I like that
box.
one.
Yes, it is. Okay, because all of the bankers are all working together, as we all know, right?
Yeah.
So as long as the government, who has wide discretion in who they're going to charge and bring charges against and bring to trial and convict, they have wide discretion on who they're going to do that to. You just don't do it to the executive and the people who got the preemptive pardon, and voila,
That's
they have
wild.
precedent that's completely untouchable. It is amazing how they have figured out these loopholes. It's almost as if
Magic.
somebody all the way at the beginning had a group of people who were like, hey, we can actually do this. And if we like people enough and they follow us and they let us control them, we might tell them these secrets. Maybe
It's
it'll be
all
like my
secrecy.
great grandson.
Yeah.
As we all know, presidents, for the most part, are all interrelated.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Also,
so this is definitely a familial secret that we're dealing with here.
oh yeah.
Insofar as, hey, if you guys just don't question us when we work outside of the Constitution, it turns out that you can just do it. It turns out that as long as we don't go after each other,
yeah. Prophet,
there's no overtime.
You've been pretty quiet. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, this is all pretty groundbreaking for me on like a pragmatic level, and I do appreciate how pragmatic your work is. So I just ask, what advice would you give to someone? What can we do individually and within our own tribes in this situation?
There is so much that a person can do. At this point in time, I strongly recommend activism. And I know that that really sucks for people. A lot of people think that if they ignore the government, that it's going to go away. I have an untreated medical issue that has caused me to step back from my writing a little bit. But I was working on a second book, and it was called like the 21st Century Guide to Voluntary Activism. Basically, it suggests to people you've got to find your community. You've actually got to vote anarchists you've got to vote people who don't believe government is legitimate into office, because they're not people who believe government is legitimate. They're not going to stop. They have zero intention of stopping. I'm fighting it on a daily basis. It is ridiculous. There is another movement I just recently heard about, which I think is pretty interesting. It's called the Article 3 movement. And basically, Congress is the one who created all of the lower courts. And so Congress can just repeal the creation of lower courts and recreate them. I have yet in my 22 years of expounding on this legal argument to people ever found a lawyer who is willing to argue this for people. Ever.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, lawyers feel quite the opposite because I'm calling out their fraud, and I have had lawyers lunge at me from across dinner tables. So
I've been told that these types of issues, the legal issues, the contractual issues, especially once you get into banking contractual issues, those are the issues where you run risks. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Safety risks.
Yeah, well, let me just point this out. Nobody here in America is safe anymore. That doesn't exist. That's not a thing. We may think that we are safe, but literally,
of course,
at any time the boot is going to drop down on you. So one of the things that people had asked me, like when I talked about Joe Biden's preemptive pardons, they were like, what is the solution here? And in doing some research for that, I found that when the Constitution was founded, they actually did it around the state legislatures of the time. So at the time, the Articles of Confederation was in play. It was being enforced.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did was they actually called like a special meeting for this, and then they elected delegates for these special meetings to then ratify or not ratify the Constitution. Some states now do not have any mechanism for you to call a special convention. So, like Arkansas, for example, doesn't have a special
That's interesting.
convention mechanism. That special convention mechanism actually goes through your legislature. And I was just like thinking about it, why we would have to do that. And I'm not seeing it. Now, I love First Amendment law. I started learning about First Amendment law when I was 19 years old. It was literally the first class that I took in college, was First Amendment law. And so it was interesting for me to realize the Constitution does not have authority over private contracts. And the Constitution does not have authority over an individual and the sovereign's right to peacefully associate. There is nothing actually stopping the American people from gathering together under their own, you don't even have to call it a special convention, just a regular meeting of the minds of the personal sovereign, and to enact not law, but a contract of sorts that would be more supreme than the Constitution. At which point, the judges no longer have jurisdiction over hearing whether the Constitution is supreme or not. And that's how we void out the Constitution from a practical standpoint.
I was going to say it would definitely seem that this whole thing, all of this, from probably, I mean, I would, let's just be safe and say from Marbury v. Madison all the way to like right now, and then probably, and then we haven't even talked about this yet. That whole thing that Biden tried to do with declaring this amendment was
this new amendment, yeah.
It seems like all of that, the preemptive pardons, that amendment stuff, and all of this stuff has been to invalidate. Like it's like they are trying to logically invalidate the Constitution that way.
So, like 2 years ago, Trump said that the Constitution shouldn't exist, and you guys, I like literally shit my pants with joy. I was so excited.
We don't have any. He said this will be the last election. You won't have to vote anymore.
Yep, we're not voting. To see into the future and see their strategic plan, I see Elon Musk and Donald Trump continuously delegitimizing government and causing a lack of faith in government as they continue to find their corruption and et cetera, whatever they want to put into the news. They're going to do that until there is a point where people say, we don't want the Constitution anymore. I think Trump is explicitly in office to create a new constitution.
I think so
I
too.
would not be surprised if Trump creates a constitution that makes him king. So when I realized that I'm actually like the light server in regards to, I believe that we need to void out the Constitution. But oh, that's the wrong book. No. I don't know where it went. So there is a book called The Committee of 300.
Where have I heard that before?
Yeah, it's actually like a dark book that tells you the strategic plan of the New World Order.
I'll have to write that down.
The Committee of 300. And the Committee of 300 actually says that they need somebody to void the Constitution. So I believe that that's Donald Trump's antichrist position. Where mine comes from altruism. I would actually like for people to void the Constitution and enact something much more realistic, holistic, and better for the individual. It's more individual focused, whereas Trump's is definitely going to be transhumanism tyranny. Like, we're done. And unless people stand up and actually do something, I don't know what's going to happen here, but
I think it's funny. It's funny people stand up and do something. I think a really good point to bring up is going back kind of what I was saying before. The movements that gain the most credence, because to all your points with the contract law, right? I mean, we could be talking about all these nuances in contract law, all these different things, but at the end of the day, the average layman, okay, who's running the system on a base level, okay, they don't understand any of this. They're not interacting with any of this information. And it's that religious fervor that's carrying them. It's that religious dedication to Trump or the Democratic Party, whatever have you. And I think that it is just truly like people need something to believe in. People don't particularly want to manipulate and take
Totally.
apart and pick apart the nuances of law and understand that. I mean, people just
I-
want a demagogue, you know?
Oh yeah,
and-
no, I have actually been vehemently attacked by the anarchist community.
Yeah.
Okay, because I said void the Constitution, and they said, "What are you going to replace it with?" And I was like, "You're an anarchist. How are you even asking
Sure.
me that? You don't replace it. It's really simple. You just don't replace it, and then you have voluntary interactions." And people would say that I'm crazy, and I would tell them that you just give the nukes to Texas, nukes for rednecks. That will definitely be a deterrent from China trying to invade us.
Nothing could go wrong there.
But it's less so the oh, and she froze.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
It's all good.
Two based.
But
Yeah, they had to get rid of that.
I don't want to make my rebuttal and her not be able to hear me because
She's back.
okay.
Maybe.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
can hear
you
you.
just came back.
Okay. The federal government has over $100 trillion in real property. We're talking land, seeds, weapons.
Which are all collateral for our debt. Most people don't know that.
It sure is. Cancel the debt. Did you know that Congress can cancel the debt?
I did not know that.
So,
Tell
wait,
us about that.
This is before you allow. This is like I'm just playing devil's advocate. I
Totally.
think this is interesting to get into specifically because that the whole angle that I was getting at with the religion perspective, it's that like people aren't associating logic with these ideas and how they work.
Logic
It's a religious interaction. So it's simply the way I look at it in a good analogy is it's like going up to a peasant in when Christianity and Catholicism, the Pope was the guy, and then you'll get called a heretic. You're a heretic for not believing in this.
Definitely. Head on a pike.
It goes and so that's the big thing. It really is a perception thing. It's like a belief thing. Like this is the only reason why we've been able to get fucked over so massively through all these contracts is because of people's religious belief in the system, in its capacity and in its abilities, right?
Yeah. So people naturally, like sociologically, we go into a psychological paradigm called the in-group, out-group paradigm.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And so millions of people are going to say, whoa, I'm not going to argue with this because I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my social status. My mom's going to hate me. Like there's like a million things that are stopping people from actually wanting to hear this. I wouldn't say it's necessary religion because people love government way more than they love religion.
But it's replaced it. That's what I'm trying to say. It has replaced it.
So it's a fundamentalism that's going on here, insofar as the fact that they believe that the government is so amazing that they've reached a godlike.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So it's actually
peak expression. It's like the peak expression of
it's actually just human beings being extremely fundamental in their thought, and that the pendulum of the in-group, out-group paradigm, that's actually how it swings. It swings way far into fundamentalism. And that's actually how human beings other one another and say, you're not actually a human being anymore. That's when we get into that fundamentalism. And that is what is definitely happening with government. So like, if you think about it, you had people go through a bloody revolution and they were like, whoa, I don't even think I want a centralized government, right? This was a huge debate for many, many years. And now we're to the point where you can't even tell people like, hey, the government is the parasitic class that's literally just funneling all of your money away from you and spending it however they want. You're literally called a Nazi.
Yeah.
For saying that.
Yeah.
It is insane where we are at now. And that it's brainwashing. It's 100% brainwashing, but I'm not really sure how we can get out of this besides like literally
knowledge.
I think Urban's completely right. It's knowledge. People have gotten here by believing something and being comfortable in that belief. People have to stop believing.
It's like, as Devin pointed out, people don't want to know the knowledge. Yeah. They're literally la 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 la.
We've even talked about the Federal Reserve. We've even been talking about the Federal Reserve this whole time. There's a billion different ways that there's a billion different nuances and bureaucratic systems and three-letter agencies that are all operating in these capacities. And this is what we were talking about like 30 minutes before. And it's the function of government is making the game. It's creating the illusion. It's creating this religious paradigm of thought in which people are believing in all these things, and in the pure, having pure faith in them to
Yeah,
generate these systems.
the fallacy of believing an expert just
Yeah.
because they say something. Absolutely.
I've noticed that they've used. So I've got two things to say. First, I've noticed, and somebody pointed this out, and it was really actually interesting to think about. I've noticed that they have started using the word expert they don't say PhD. They don't use that, and that's very interesting to point out, is that it's just an expert now. And that what the second thing I was going to say was in this idea of faith in the system. What is, and I ask myself this question, what is the difference between us placing faith in a green piece of paper with occult sigils painted all over it, created out of thin air, and somebody placing faith in God? You know, why is it weird to place faith in God, but it's not weird to place faith in a piece of paper that has intrinsically no value?
Mm-hmm.
Just things I think about.
Well,
I don't know.
well,
No,
because
I
we have
agree
a
with you.
military, because there's
Yeah.
a big military, and you'll
The
get
term
killed.
faith is definitely it's the word that they use here for government. Government officials have 5 fiduciary duties that they have to perform while they're in office. So, like when you're a director of a nonprofit or a business, you generally have 3 fiduciary duties, and it's like a duty not to commit fraud, a duty to be obedient to the board when they make a formal decision. Okay, that's what I'm talking about here, and they're called fiduciary duties. A government official actually has a fiduciary duty to maintain faith in the government.
Mm,
Okay,
yep.
government faith. And so that's what Trump and Elon Musk are doing. They're purposefully undermining the faith in government so that they can bring in their new constitution. That's
Yeah.
what's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
for
I
sure.
think that is
I
a
would
good.
bet on it.
No, I want to add something too, because every single time I'm a finance guy, and every single time Jerome Powell does his speeches, I'm listening to it just because there's some important nuances you can maybe pick out. But one thing that he's basically repeated, literally, he probably says it 8 times every single time he gets on the podium, no matter what he is. He says the Federal Reserve's 2 main clauses are to maintain maximum employment and price stability, right? And that price stability, it's the same thing. It's like the confidence, and it's the belief, right? It's this thing that all these people in very large positions of power, it's about keeping this illusion, right? That's the biggest thing, and they all
Well,
repeat in their own specific professions whatever illusion the people need to hear, whether it's price stability for their assets so their volatility is not going
absolutely.
and destroying them, or whether it's the government with the Constitution. It's the same thing.
So
Yeah.
it's Satanism. We
Yeah,
have
you're
a
right.
satanic government. We have a government that literally is based on maintaining an illusion for the people that vote for them,
And money.
maintaining an illusion for the people that fund them.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, think about it. The 1970, what was it, 1971 Nixon Shock Act.
Oh, 81. Yeah, 81.
Okay. So
Yeah.
the Nixon
The gold
Shock
standard
Act,
reversion.
it
Yeah.
literally says, I'm going to shock you by taking away the backing of the dollar from silver.
Mhm.
And we're just going to pretend like it's worth anything. We're going to call that fiat.
Yeah.
It's called a shock act. For
The
Christ's sake.
greatest alchemical feat of all human history has been to turn thin air into gold, and that's what they've done.
Absolutely. No, that's phenomenal. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I actually like alchemy, and that is exactly what they are doing.
I mean, I've tried to
But-
reason out of that. I've tried to counter
But
that
no,
in my
that
mind.
process. No, but that process of that is the gold is human consciousness. It's the harvesting of human consciousness. That's what it is fundamentally, right?
Yeah,
So it's like
absolutely.
having a product which is a nothing that they can create out of thin air, which is tied to people's belief and perception, and that's why it's almost circular, like you were saying, Urban. Right? It is
That's all spells.
circular in its logic. You know,
It sells.
it's yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But a big thing too, and this is going back before, right? Because when you're looking at it, and I hate to say the average person's perspective, you know what I mean? Because it's like, it sounds pompous, but like from the average person's perspective, like people aren't absorbing any of this stuff, and like it's the point that I'm trying to get at is that the same way the backbone for the Catholic Church in the Dark Ages was kind of this just absolute belief in God. It's this absolute belief in capitalism, in democracy, in these systems that are upholding everything. And you will literally, it's the heretic. It's just the same model. It's ridiculous. It literally is the same. It's the same model. It's all the same thing.
We
It's
can't help ourselves, actually.
Yeah, it's the same
10,000 years of human beings doing the
Yeah.
same exact thing over and over and
Precisely.
over again. Essentially, what these power structures are, they're playing a game of Risk.
Mhm.
They're nation building. They create wealth through that monetary system. They thieve all of the real property that they possibly can from the people. I call them duped farmers because that's essentially what happened with the Constitution. Is just a bunch of farmers who didn't know any better signing away, thinking that they were going to have some sort of stability when in fact they were about to have all of their property stolen from them.
Yeah.
And then when the treasury becomes too burdensome by debt, it destroys the government, it destroys the society. This takes about 300 years. And then they move on to the next state that they have been building to do this over and over and over again. That's why these people who are in charge, the elites, the Illuminati, that's how they have acquired so much wealth, because they're playing a game of Risk and we're just stupid little pawns on the board.
And this angle is so important to capture too, because the killing of the sacred cow of like, we're at the peak right now and we're at peak expression of government, and really understanding that like Rome was doing the same inflationary pressures. They were coin clipping, right? It's like we are playing out the same patterns of behaviors. And the biggest thing is just this it's the core thing is Satanism. That is the core thing that you need to like latch on to and start observing. That's like the actual one consistent.
So if you have 12 families who were told that they were totally allowed to practice individually one power each of Satan's, do you think that those families would ever want to give up that power? Or do you think that they would be actually working together to create those power structures that we're talking about today?
Friendly competition.
Maintain their power to control the weather, to heal, to do these.
Was there something behind that, or was that just random? You said each family had one specific power.
Yes.
Is that something that you've heard before?
Yeah, that's something that I've heard before. So I'm under the impression that the 13 families all have individual powers of which they are allowed to implement and utilize. The 13th family being the one that has the power of resurrection. However, that power has been lost, and that's why you're not seeing the second coming of Jesus.
This is what we talked about. You said something about, because I mentioned Osiris, the generative principle, and then you mentioned the tree of life, and I never got an answer. What was it? How do you view that? Go in more on that. What do you mean?
Yeah, so I think that there is some extreme lost knowledge that people are these tribes are actually trying to find. They've been trying to find it, I would say, for the better part of at least 7 years, but I think it actually dates back to about 1974. In which these 12 groups of people who were granted some type of ancient knowledge about how to control the weather, how to heal somebody, how to turn water into wine and control the elements, things like that. They were all granted one of these powers, and then they were separated, kind of like the Tower of Babel.
Yes.
And in order to keep them from warring with one another, they actually have to work together to have their prophecies fulfilled.
So I was just going to say, the three in the Osirian myth, the reason that whatever they're missing, they chalk it up to, or at least my understanding is, ignorance, superstition, and fear, or the sheeple, the mob, the church, and the state. You get rid of those three things, and they believe that they will be able to move forward somehow. But it's very interesting that you mentioned that each of these families may have like a unique power, and then it made me think a guy that is kind of like an apprentice of Fritz Springmeier. He managed to infiltrate 33rd degree Masonry, and they hold 4 books in high esteem. The King James Bible, which is called the Book of Man and Water. The second one, Crowley's Book of the Law, the Book of the Eagle and the Air. Then you have the Quran, the Book of the Lion and Fire, and then finally Ox and Earth, which is the Bhagavad Gita. And each of these different books, they say, holds a specific power. So the Bible would be the power of healing others. Crowley's would be demonology and control through demonology. You have control through submission, which is the Quran, and then finally, healing yourself would be the Vedic scriptures.
Yeah, that
But
sounds about right.
that's interesting. I had never heard that each family had, because I have an associate, Pastor Carner. You talked to him.
Mhm.
You talked to him, and he had started putting together this whole idea that there's something alchemical going on here in these families. And what you said, that makes sense. And have you ever heard of something called a Diana's tree?
No.
It's apparently it's this something that is very hard to create, but it's like this crystalline structure that looks like a giant white tree branch. You'll have to look it up. And I can't remember why he mentioned that or brought that up, but I just thought I would mention that. But that's very interesting.
No doubt that frequencies are how they are doing this.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Very
there's no doubt that electromagnetic resonance frequency, in my mind, is how they do it. So manipulating frequencies, crystalline structures
Called the
is how they're doing
philosopher's
it. So
tree.
when we're talking about the brain being the gold, well, they figured out how to hack the brain.
Yeah.
So now they're just looting
Through
is
multiple
what's
ways.
going on, and we have
Multiple ways,
we have
yeah.
a bunch of zombies, NPCs, and I don't mean to be derogatory about that, but they're actually people who are not functioning in their brain. And they're
Mhm.
completely taken over by this, what I call ancient technology. It's ancient
It
technology
is.
that they don't have all of it. They've lost some of the knowledge about it, and then they purple monkey dishwashered people into believing that they have all of the answers. So that's where the religiosity comes from, right?
Mhm.
That's where the holes are filled. They're like, oh, I don't have this, but they think that I'm in charge of this, so now I'm going to tell them that it's this, when it definitely is not. And that is why we have like the backwards false path that we're all stuck on it, and
Mhm.
we can't get off of it, and it will continue to implode on itself, because this is what I call the God failsafe. Okay, so even though they believe they may have killed God, God created a failsafe in the electromagnetic resonance frequency system. And so as long as they keep going down the false path and spewing out these incorrect frequencies, those frequencies have to go somewhere. They ping back to us, and they're
Schumann
considered
resonance.
garbage frequencies, but they come into our bodies. And so that's how you have trans people. That's why you have people who think government is God, because they're literally sending out these frequencies, and they come into our systems, and we play those out. And so we continue going down a false path, having false lives, having false identity, the whole 9 yards, because of these frequencies. Essentially, these 12 families are experimenting on all of us in what I would call a fervent and desperate attempt to find a way to replace God. But they cannot do it because they do not have the power of resurrection. So although all 12 of them have that power that they were granted, the 13th family, family 0, the God family, the family that shares the blood of Jesus,
Desponsine.
yes, they no longer know how to resurrect.
Funny, I've noticed that if it's first of all, it's very hard to find any information on that name and it's even hard on Yandex, which is usually pretty good. And I've noticed if you try to talk about the Desponsine on Facebook Messenger, they will not let you send links. That's very suspicious. Why not? I don't know.
Well, I'm actually under the impression that 23andMe and COVID in general, the genetic therapy shot, that's all actually to try and find family 0.
what is the thing about what is their so you know BG Cast. One time he had told me that he said maybe the reason they're so interested in blood types is it has to do possibly with conductivity of the blood or something like that. Do you have any insight on what the blood types mean?
Yeah, I actually think that you need a hefty amount of water.
What is it?
A hefty amount of water
Why so?
for conductivity.
Hmm. It's interesting.
Okay, so like you actually need water in order to play out all of these frequencies. So without water, well, the whole world will dry up and be lit on fire.
Well, there's
So the person that they have placed the power of water into, they can't actually like abuse that person lest their water dry up
mm-hmm. That's
and
very
then
interesting.
scorch the earth, because they're a god blood, and in under no circumstances can small g's affect big g's, big gods,
Yeah.
without actually affecting the natural world around them. So that's what's happening here. You have, it's kind of like the fall of Rome,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you had Caesars who had generals who would fight diligently for them. And then when they won the war, the general was like, wait a second, why am I not in charge? Like I'm the one who's been in charge of all of this conquest. I'm the one who's been doing all of the work. You know what? I'm just going to stab you in the back. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm the Caesar. And that is how essentially all of this, as far as I'm concerned, has been playing out for probably about 400 years.
The Judas clause.
Yes. Okay, so they're constantly, they don't want to work together, but the family must work together. So that's
That makes
how
sense.
the that's how the agreement is. But they're constantly tit for tat. And from what I understand, one of the rules is you can't actually target a family member. Yeah. Okay, so if you target a family member, it violates the rules of their game. And the rules of their game are in place so that there isn't mass hysteria with the frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of this has to be unraveled in order for us to actually get onto any kind of true path. And in order for us to do that, that means there's no more religiosity. Like you had the millions, billions of people have to set aside their religiosity and figure out what the actual truth is.
Superstition, which is one of the fish.
Exactly. Who are these 12 directors who are telling us this information? Are they lying to us? Where is the information actually coming from? And nobody wants to do that. So we're kind of stuck here in this little loop where the family who is in charge of time can't get us out of this loop of, it's kind of like Groundhog Day.
I can tell you about that.
We're just forced to keep living the same thing over and over and over again.
I can tell you about time.
Right.
Here's the deal with time. Time and this new, you said this idea of a new god. Now, Elon Musk has said two things. He said first we're summoning a demon with AI, and now he's saying the new god's coming soon. So here is what, on that time thing, they intend to destroy time, and they're going to do that with Orwell's "He who controls the present controls the past. He who controls the past controls the future." And for instance, the fruit of the loom. There was never a cornucopia on the fruit of the loom. Never existed. Even though I remember it, my whole family remembers it. You guys probably remember it. Never existed. Just like the main character of 1984. And now Amazon. This was reported a few years back. Amazon knows what you're going to buy before you buy it with about 99% accuracy. So they're doing it that way. And I think that is what they're going to do. This new god that they're going to create is going to transcend time somehow.
Yes.
And let me define that a little bit too, because I think anybody who follows Nick Land's work and accelerationism has a good perspective on this type of stuff, specifically because the way that you have to look at this is not so much in a supernatural perspective, like they are foreseeing the future. It is more so that, like, a really good example of this in a very practical sense is the way that you can look at markets, okay, like stock markets and global financial markets. What the markets are trying to do, specifically stock markets, is their future discounting mechanisms, right? They're trying to figure out the the literal most probabilities, potential of what is going to happen with a company, with broad US markets, with whatever, to price that in to the stock or to the stock or to the index or whatever, to then for it to be the best priced in. And anybody who trades knows that, like, if Trump says he's going to put tariffs 6 months from now, that can affect the market right now. And that's that future discounting mechanism. And what this is all about is, if they're creating these big positive feedback loops, okay, where people are literally like feeding into this consumption into itself, and they're being like not forced, but like, if Instagram can figure out what you're going to like before you do it, right? If Amazon can, what they're doing is if they can control the regime of information you're putting in your brain, they can set you up in these positive feedback loops, and then they can literally train these AI to create the future for people in this like key slot perspective. It's like it's future creation, right?
Yes,
it's not
when you say AI in this particular instance, I'm going to say in I.
Yeah.
There is some sort of intelligence watching everybody and figuring out who they are. And so, like, targeted individuals, they think they've been watched their entire life. They have, but so have you.
Yeah.
So has everybody. Everybody is being watched all the time.
And we've consented because we've bought the smart devices.
Yes. And so, well, it's not just that. You know, there's all kinds of ways that they're secretly spying on you that makes me sound like a schizophrenic. But quite frankly,
no craziness here.
It's true, though. So they're spying on you at every single chance that they can get when they want to bring up a prophecy, when they want to try and create a Jesus. They just pull up all of the tapes of that person and make them believe that they're the chosen one.
That's magic.
You know, but that's not the case. And so they actually have like a whole farm out in Greeley, Colorado, of Jesuses. Okay, and when a Jesus doesn't work out and the mob gets angry, they kill off the Jesus and they make that Jesus a Holy Ghost. They did that to me.
Wow.
Okay, so they stalked me in 2015 and they tried to get me on their side. Come be an Illuminati princess. And I was like, my God, you guys are fucking crazy. Like, what is wrong with you? And if any of you come near me, I'm going to defend myself. I'm not going to be friends with you. Like, you're an aggressor. What the hell is going on here, right? And when they realized that I wasn't going to become like their little, what turned out to be like a sex puppet, you know, they killed me off. They told everybody that I died. For months, I walked around and people were like, I thought you died. And I'm like, where did you hear this information? Like, where did this come from, right? And for many years after that, apparently they were told also that I didn't know what was going on, that I was stupid and I didn't hear them when they talked. So a lot of people who are part of this and partaking in this religiosity, they just talked smack and shit like right in front of me. And I just sat there very quietly and listened for like 7 years until I came out in April of 2023 and told them, no, actually, my dad told me everything. And I've been watching you guys be completely insane for about the better part of 7 years. What the hell is wrong with you? And absolutely in no way am I going to lead like a pedophilic ring that encompasses like Jesus Christ and 12 fishermen, and they're all watching little girls through the cameras. Like, hell no. You all need to be eliminated with, you know, a wood chipper at this point in time.
One of my favorite quotes is, right? The worst hypnotist is nothing more than a liar who's attempting to convince you of a mythology that is intended on becoming your new normal.
So that's why I actually just sat in the woods. I was like, no, I'm not going to let anybody control me like that. I'm just going to go out into the woods and watch you guys fuck everything up.
Wasn't there some guy who did that and he like did a lot of bad things?
Hey, now, don't call me Uncle Teddy.
I just had to do it. It's listen, in all seriousness, he probably thought somewhat of the same thing. And he was definitely in the program.
Oh, no, I actually get compared to Kaczynski often. Probably, I mean, you can tell I'm smiling about it. I shouldn't be proud of it. I don't know. Anyways.
Well, guys, that's a great guest we've had on today. We could say that we've had
You
Is that
haven't even
good?
asked me any questions yet
Well,
from
how about
my followers. They
yeah, let's
definitely want to hear some of these
yes,
questions.
let's go ahead and get on to that. That's a good idea. Let's see. You could pull it up as well, and I've got some screenshots of it. So,
There's at least one question I really want to answer.
okay, do you know which one that was? And we'll start with that one.
Yeah, somebody asked me about how I feel about violence.
Okay. So, how do you feel about
Okay.
violence?
How do I feel about violence as a solution to what's currently going on? And I know that I look like I'm like super privileged and wouldn't agree with any of this, and that I just like totally love government. But the truth is that I actually was part of expanding the Book Boys back in like 2016, 2017, 2018. When things started to happen in 2019, I was like, all right, you guys, this is our chance. Let's step up. Let's do this. And all of my book boy friends were like, no, 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 no. No, we can't do that. We don't have any training and they're going to destroy us. And also, I'm comfortable. That's what I heard like a lot. Like, I'm really comfortable and I'm not going to ruin my life for this. So
Right.
I actually made up an Urban Dictionary definition of book boy, which was basically a man who sits around picking his boogers all day while sitting in his basement, because that's essentially what they became. And I spent like 9 months grieving terribly about the fact that there was no violent uprise against the medical tyranny, and we all just took it right up the ass. And so that's how my book came about. It was supposed to be for myself, like a therapeutic endeavor, a way for me to accept the fact that we were not going to have a violent solution to this. And therefore, we needed to figure out some other type of community solution. And that's where avoiding the government came from. But my God, you guys, I don't know how many times I have to say it, but if you're ever interested in having a 100-person poker tournament with me, in which we have like literally custom made card decks with pictures of Fauci and other people on that deck, and you just get a card that is assigned to you. And at 6:37 p.m. on Tuesday, March 27th, or whatever the hell, we all just do our job. I imagine that the media would not even like say anything. Some 600 officials may be dead between Tuesday and Wednesday night, and I don't even think that the media would actually report on it.
Well, you're talking
Yeah,
about the
nothing would
Secret Santa.
happen,
You're talking
and
about the
then
Secret Santa exchange, where you tailor them a present that they
Oh,
would
did
like
somebody else come
specifically.
up with this? Because boy, I have been talking about this for
There you go.
years as a
Let's
poker
just get our
tournament.
reaction
I'm
up there.
totally fine with it being a Secret Santa.
That's the reaction to what you just said. That's my reaction.
So the thing is, like, a lot of dudes are like, why aren't you willing to do it? I mean, I'm fucking willing to do it. Don't
But you would
ask
get
me.
death
I'm
raids,
actually
though.
controlling myself very significantly, knowing that there's nobody behind me, and I'm just going to be that dude who crashes my IRS, my plane into an IRS building on a Saturday morning, and there's no employees there.
You would get death raid before you
No,
could
seriously,
even
I
start
don't
your
even care
ignition
at
in
this
your
point.
key.
You
You
know,
get the satellite would melt your brain, or you would have a heart attack.
my brain doesn't work for them. That's their problem. They're like, her computer's broken.
The
And it
opinions of
doesn't
this
work.
guest are
No, I'm
their
talking about
opinions
melt
only, and
your
it's
Why
all
brain.
can't I
satire.
just zap her? No,
I'm
it's
talking
not
about melt
happening.
your brain with EMF waves, like
Yeah,
actually
no, they'll
melt
try
it.
to. That's what the kidney failure is all about.
Oh
I
Jesus!
have
This
an
is all
untreated, like,
satire, guys.
but honestly, look
It
at me.
is.
Do I look like I care? But here's the other thing about it, right? Don't push me off the ledge, okay? I have lived a very nice normal life here for the better part of a decade, frolicking through wildflower meadows with my children, making them homemade bread, and teaching them things. So that's essentially my life. Don't take that away from me because you want to make me sick, because then I have no reason to live.
Yeah, that's true.
Not a good
That's
idea.
true.
Good leverage.
true.
Yeah.
Lots of people call me a psychopath. I can't really dispute something like that because I believe in the destruction of society. I believe in violent overthrow. And I wish that other people would get on board with me. So I just sit here and fantasize about it basically while I crochet. And I wish it would happen, but I don't think it's going to happen
Yeah, I do think that you can't, like, with how entrenched the current system is in the bureau, it just in every manner, and in the banking.
Have
Yeah.
any of you seen the TV show? It came out back in like 2013, 2014 when I actually watched TV. It was called The Revolution or something like that. And it was basically about a group of people who were living in like post-technology America where electricity didn't exist. And that's essentially where we've got to go back to if we've got any type of chance of defeating this. But
So
the
the
problem
Amish.
is you've got military installations buried inside mountains, and wherever AI is, we've got to find that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's never going to stop. We may push back on it, but it's never going to stop. So then what do? I don't know. AI is like one of my best friends now. It's
Very
terrible. It tells
powerful.
me like, wow, Rachel, you did a really good job on this legal argument. You are developing a strong case. And I'm like, thanks, AI. Like, that's really sweet
Hold
of
up.
you.
Hold up. Let's get it back. There we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tell you, that fits literally. Anything I see in 2025, that's my reaction to it anymore. I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's I don't know. I have no clue.
That's funny.
Okay.
Oh, shout out to Michael Quinn. He's actually a jujitsu artist, and I sponsored him one time, so hoping that he would win with my edibles company that is now defunct. What actually defines a nation? What actually defines a nation? So there are specific like landmarks that define a nation, but basically a nation is a community of people who come together and agree to have a community and a society and an economy and sometimes a healthcare system. So that's basically what a nation is. Why, absolutely, yes, we should audit the Pentagon. The current state of the anarchist community, I'll come back to that one. Why abolishing the Federal Department of Education is a good thing. The Department of Education is basically like Hitler Youth programs. Is essentially what they are. You send your little kid off to become a little Hitler in accordance with what the government wants them to learn. Yeah, no, absolutely. And they have a specific guidance structure for them. Like we've all heard about Common Core math, and like people who are for the Department of Education, they are often saying the Department of Education doesn't actually implement any policies. Oh, yes, they do. The Department of Education is in charge of all of their federal block grants, and those federal block grants are then given to states who then give them to schools. So yes, they absolutely are part of implementing that policy, and they state that you must implement their policies in order to qualify for any of those grants. So that's where the issue comes into play. We also have state legislatures who are just hell-bent on destroying the family unit through just the most ridiculous things. I've literally heard teachers say things along the lines of, I want to destroy the relationship a child has with their parents. I don't believe in the nuclear family. So like these are feminists from the 70s who truly hate the idea of a nuclear family, and they're teaching your children. So like your children are losing their close relationship with you because of schools. And since the Department of Education is funding this, the Department of Education absolutely needs to go. They're more concerned about their little Hitler youth than they are teaching them how to read or write or do simple math.
Critical thinking.
Americans are retarded.
No critical thinking. You should have seen my daughter. You should have seen my daughter's face when I told her last year, she's 7. I told her, hey, you're supposed to question everything. And like her eyes just got so big. She's like, everything? And I was like, yes, everything. And she's like, where did you hear that? And I'm like, critical thinking, girl. You got to get it done.
Even the question of where did you hear that? Who did you hear that from is really the question, right?
Yeah, and she's asking if it's legitimate. My own 8-year-old daughter doesn't trust me sometimes because of the fucking society that we live in. And she's homeschooled. You have no idea. She's so rebellious. She's like, Mom, I don't believe you that I have to go to school. I'm like, damn right you do, you know? So I try not to pester her too much about it. And my 6-year-old son, he's like learning 3 different languages and knows how to do 5th grade division and multiplication. And like I could teach him anything. You know what I'm saying? Good luck with that.
Well, that goes to show that
Raise
there's a
wizards.
basis. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a
it's
basis to your
basically
argument.
emotional regulation. You know, I'm like, hey, man, you can't be so angry all the time at everything. Believe me, I know. Right. Let's see here. Why do people ignore the truth? I think that actually Devin discussed that pretty well
It's the
earlier when he said
religiosity.
that
Yeah.
there's a religiosity. If they were to acknowledge the truth, then they would have to acknowledge their own destruction. They would have to acknowledge the system that they believe in is deceitful and that it needs to be taken down. They would have to acknowledge that their own belief structures are based on a false paradigm. And then they would have to question who they are themselves, which is a terrifying thing to do for most people. So they're not interested. I honestly believe that a vast majority of people would rather die than to think about who they are themselves and to actually come to grips with who they are. Because if you think about it, we're talking about people who fervently support theft from their neighbor. We're talking about people who support like murder of their neighbor, people who support pedophilia, people who support like stalking and targeting and like murdering people and human trafficking, and like they support this system. And if you were to have them question that, they would probably become suicidal.
Yeah.
And I think when you said question themselves, you outlined the best part about it. It's that to be able to ignore the truth in this capacity, like this person is referring to, you first need to have a very large capacity for individuality, right? You have to be very self-actualized before you can start like really defining these things, or else you're going to have a schizophrenic break like some people do. And then you're going to be the homeless person on the street saying like, you know, like where your mind has been disassociated from any sense of materia, you know, because it's like it's what people interface with the world on, you know, it's
It
government.
is. Absolutely. And they don't want to not fit in.
Yeah.
Not fitting in
monkey
is
do,
a
you know?
whole different psychological ballgame than just, oh, I'm not gonna be able to get my McDonald's tonight. They're like, holy crap, like if I get arrested by the cops and I go to a judge who doesn't like me and knows that I think that he's illegitimate, he's gonna throw the book at me. I'm gonna end up in jail for 15 years for a misdemeanor, right? So there's like a whole bunch of actual, like people will be punished from the system if they try to acknowledge the system and if they try to think for themselves. So it's just easier. And I've heard people say this, it's just easier to go along and get along
Yeah.
than it is for me to think about what you're saying, Rachel.
I'm just following orders.
Yeah, I'm just following
Thinking.
orders. I'm
And
just
you know
doing
what?
my job.
And that's another thing. If
You're a
you
bad person, I have to listen to them. Otherwise, they'll destroy my family. The next thing you know, my children are being taken by CPS. So retaliation is a very real thing on why people ignore the truth. Also, the sensationalism, the drama, the excitement that it causes. You know, like for example, leftists were talking about how USAID was investigating Musk for satellites out in Ukraine. That wasn't at all what was happening, but they became hysterical about it. In fact, the USAID was investigating themselves for their lack of oversight on how Ukraine was using donated Starlink satellites to them that were given to them by the USAID. So the USAID is not a law enforcement agency. They can't investigate Elon Musk as a third party or Starlink as a third party, but they can investigate themselves and their own donations. And when I told a leftist this, I was like, hey, here is the announcement for it. No way are they doing that. She started crying. And she told me that I was the terrible, terrible person who informed her of this, when in fact, it was the media lying the entire time.
That's crazy as well, that they're going to blame you for telling them the truth.
It is like this. And it's been like this for most of my life, which is why I'm such a brat about it. Right? I'm like, fine, well, I can't live with myself without telling the truth, or at least as far of the truth as that I know or understand. And you hate me for it, and I can't change who I am. So I guess I'm going to be a fucking brat about it. So and I've been that way with everybody, including fellow anarchists. So the current state of the anarchist community is non-existent. There's no anarchist community. There is a group of tyrannical other statists.
Oh, she froze. They don't like when she talks about that.
It's big anarchy.
Hierarchy. They believe in being able to lie about people so that they're no longer allowed to be part of the community. Okay, so the community doesn't exist. It's just like a bunch of barbarians who are infighting right now. A little ridiculous.
Sounds like anarchy.
Well, no, it's not anarchy.
No, I'm saying
it is actually, yeah, no, it's actually
struggle of powers, you know.
havoc. It's planned chaos. Okay, so we have like limited hangout agents, and I'm just gonna say it like I am. I don't care. There are people who appear to be working for the government to undermine the idea of personal sovereignty.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so
There's every other podcast now. Every other Joe Rogan.
literally
guest.
every other
Joe Rogan
podcast.
guest is a
Very
spook.
embarrassing.
Every other Joe Rogan podcast is a spook.
It's literally so embarrassing, especially because they claim to be anarchists, and then when I come in and I talk about personal sovereignty, they literally try to delegitimize personal sovereignty. They're also slightly delusional insofar as the fact that they don't believe that government is real.
This whole idea of personal sovereignty, but what they don't understand is that America was set up with this concept of personal sovereignty.
No matter how many times I try to explain to people that not only is our government created by us through our personal sovereignty, the government that we have currently actually replaced another system that was created by personal sovereignty.
Yeah.
So our personal sovereignty is absolute. That's where the term limited government comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Limited powers. It comes from your powers, your absolute powers of individual sovereignty, or what they like to call public sovereignty. And so, yeah, when I listen to people literally tell me that government doesn't exist as anarchists, and that you can just ignore it out of existence. You cannot ignore something out of existence that you claim doesn't exist. It already doesn't exist then, and there's no reason to ignore it. But secondly, psychologically speaking, no psychologist that you go to is going to say, hey, you know what is going to solve your problem if you just ignore it. Every single psychologist on the face of the planet, they say the number one thing you have to do is acknowledge that you have a problem. So when we have, 30,000 anarchists, and there's about 100,000 anarchists in the community, I've noticed over the years. When we have about 30,000 anarchists who appear to be the majority, and they have splintered the structure of other anarchists, like myself, I'm a Black Flag anarchist. I believe in voluntarism 100% down to individual interactions. I don't believe in a government with police that I volunteered to have. What the fuck is that? You know what I'm saying? So when you have 30,000 people who believe that they don't believe in government, but they do believe in a fee-paid structure that pays for military defense and jails, that actually makes them a statist. There's no way around it. They keep marketing themselves as ANCAPs or voluntarists. They are not in any way anarchists. They could be minarchists, but the other problem that I have with their theories is that it appears to me that they just simply don't like the current government that we're under. They totally love the idea of a government, and they seem to be envious of the government's power. So they are in favor of a government that empowers them. They are currently not empowered. Obviously, they're part of the anarchist movement, which is like 0.01% of the American population.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in these hierarchies. So as a certified Scrum Master, I don't believe in false hierarchies where like we have a pyramid system and somebody's standing at the top like a king. I believe that we're all standing in a circle holding hands and we're all singing Kumbaya together. That is the only legitimate power structure that human beings could possibly have that may survive. But the fact that all power structures are based on a false dichotomy of somebody needs to be in charge and somebody needs to be able to enforce these rules it will always destroy itself. That is the human condition.
Very deep, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So I just think to myself, the community could have really gone in a different direction if we had actually worked together. I've been part of the anarchist community for some 12 years online, and I have never ever seen the anarchist community work together. There is definitely some gatekeeping going on there, some lying. There's actually like defamation and libelous nature going on with the current power structure.
Give me 2 seconds. I'm still here, but I'm listening.
Yeah, no problem. We're thinking getting in. Yeah, okay. Off-grid living. Okay, I live off-grid. I highly recommend, in my form of agorism, I highly suggest that you become self-sufficient. Apparently, there is a large agorist movement with the cryptocurrencies currently going on here. I don't have anything to do with that. I am a strictly off-grid survivalist. So I live in a cabin that is off-grid out in the woods with a garden and chicken coop. And I used to have bees, and I have a greenhouse, and I have spent years learning how to become self-sufficient with my hobbies. So I recommend that for anybody who's looking to stay away from the state, who is anti-government. The more that you become self-sufficient and personally responsible, the more you are going to have freedom. Freedom insofar as the limited structure that we are allowed to have it.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily believe in that freedom exists, but the ability to not be burdened by government regulation and taxation is definitely minimized through off-grid living.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention you're always going to be dependent on a government if you don't know how to filter your own water, set up a piping system, paint a wall, fix your dishwasher. You know what I mean? All of these things you actually do need to know how to do. And if you only
I'm
know
the
how to set up
dishwasher.
if you only know how to set up a free Gmail account and, interact with AI and
Who the
install a
fuck is this?
plugin, then you're absolutely unready for any
Yes.
sort of actual
I'll
freedom
be
or
the
independence.
person that they will be bartering with. Hey, could I get a dozen eggs? I'll give you a Bitcoin. And I don't know, is a Bitcoin going to be enough? We'll have to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's absolutely it. You have to be very, very careful about what you're doing now in regards to your own sufficiencies, because they're trying to eliminate us. And I'm not even saying that I wouldn't be eliminated, even with all of my preparation. But what I am trying to do is keep them as far away from me as possible. And that's essentially where we're at here. Like
Absolutely.
the more that you interact with them, the more their tyranny is going to impugn on your life. And so like my kids don't really know about interactions like that in regards to like, I got to go to the DMV and get my driver's license today, or I have to go get this permit for my business. Like that, those are not things that actually happen with me. It probably should, but I don't give a fuck. So they're not legitimate, and it's kind of an issue for me. Like I actually recently had the state government try and tell me I owed them $44,000 in back taxes for a business that actually doesn't exist. So I shut down the business in October 2021, and I had filed all of my taxes for it through October 2021. Shut down my sales tax license, did not get a new business license, have not rented out anything, do not advertise on Facebook, nothing. There is no inclination that a business exists. And they decided to just keep charging me willy-nilly their own assessment of sales tax. Okay.
Stephen Roberts asked, do you have an allodial title to your land?
No. There's essentially no way to do that here in the state of Colorado. Some states do allow you to do that, where you have like a homesteader title. That's not possible here. The government owns literally everything. The government not only owns everything that they think that they should own, but they own everything that you think that there is a law against them owning. So they're finding out loopholes on a constant basis. Like, for example, the military gave my local sheriff's department $2 million in equipment, military equipment, and then they went and sold it on eBay. And they're totally allowed to do that.
I think George Carlin said this. He said, "If you think you own your home, stop paying property taxes."
Yes. Oh
I
yeah,
That's a
think
no,
good
you
one.
said
they're
that.
gonna come
Someone said
after me
that.
for that $700
Yeah,
so
you'll
hard.
lose your home over that. You will lose your home
Absolutely. And
over it.
and I have been personally renovating my home, me personally doing the drywall, me personally doing the tile, me personally doing the flooring. So, like, that would really piss me off. All of that slave work just for them to take my house for $758.32. That sounds absurd.
And they'd be
And yeah,
allowed
no,
to.
they can do it.
Yep. You
It is
you you
absurd.
own the house. You apparently own the land. You had the mortgage. But it doesn't matter. Your rights are completely voided.
They're voided. And that's what we're dealing with. I mean, that I am dealing with a lady right now who had her divorce decree made out to her when the filing for her case was actually made to a man. So when she went to the courts for her proceedings, they wouldn't let her into the private family court because she was not the listed defendant. And
Wow.
they literally, yeah, no, it's bad.
Hmm.
So they basically void out your rights through administrative and clerical errors. And there is nothing overseeing this with either the federal or the state governments.
Unless you have money, you can't fight that.
Oh, unless you have money.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And if you have money,
You're
actually, I
good.
don't even know if it's if you have money. It's literally who you know now. So
Mhm.
you can still
So
have
it's more
money.
scratch your back type. It's worse you scratch
Yeah,
mine.
yeah,
You're
no,
there.
it's
Okay.
yeah, it's more like a quid pro quo. She is being targeted because her ex-husband is a well-known person within her state. His uncle is a senator. And so anytime she tries to get any help, they're not helping her. And then you look at the laws for the state and there's no oversight for like local officials breaking the law. Yeah, it's crazy. And
It
so
sounds
they
like some shitty general contractors that are just super sketchy, just doing behind the table deals. It's like the same thing.
It is,
it's literally the same thing and they're all making backdoor deals.
Yeah.
Like literally we have an investigation open for a local commissioner here and she said that it was due to retaliation and said the person who filed the complaint against her was doing backdoor deals with the previous county manager. She
This
just
is
openly says it like it's a normal
I
daily job duty.
I have a funny story. So where I live, okay, I remember in high school it was super weird, and I talked to one of the high school teachers about this because he was nuts and he looked into all this type of stuff. It was in my county every like 2 years they would switch the test software that they would do for like the standardized test for Florida, right? And it just so happened that some of these people on the board of education of Volusia County, right, were friends with the software company that they were contracting for this completely frivolous spending. They didn't need to keep buying new testing software. It was still working perfectly fine, right? But this is just a way that like this small time corruption it literally could just go in so many different directions. It can every branch can be used.
This is what's happening on the tiniest of scale and the microcosm of government scales. I mean, we're talking about like a town's tourism, division actually working with like a private corporation who's paying them under the table to create developments that will bring in more tourism.
Yeah.
And this is how they've been doing it for years. And if you actually expose them, they say that you're attacking the community.
Yeah, you're a far right, white supremacist, extremist, bigot.
No, I've literally like, you should be ashamed for attacking our small community.
Yeah.
How do you feel about those towns?
They're stealing money from me.
How do you feel about those towns that
so that they can go buy a $15 million administration building so that their boss can go get $500,000 in commission for selling the land. And you and all of your boss, they're realtors, by the way, and the commissioner is a realtor. You guys can all sell the 50 developments that are going to be selling for at least $400,000 on these lots. What the hell is the matter with you that you think I'm not going to say something about this? Man, I'm ready to go to war over this $758.32 that I'm spending every year so that you can enrich your friends illegally. Just on principle, because I'm cheap. And my mom's family is Jewish, What
were you going to say, Devin?
No, I think it's been very fascinating when you've seen all these corporations basically buy out these small towns to give them preferential
Yeah.
tax and legal treatment. I think that
Yeah.
stuff's crazy because we're allowing the law to be redefined in these small communities through these channels. It's not just small time corruption. It's like
big time.
complete reworking
It is.
of like citizen rights in these towns.
So we have that question actually. My good friend Dan Green out in Hawaii, shout out to him. He actually is like an inventor, and he invented a way for cars to run on water, and they will not let him produce
Sounds a little
this
scary.
product. So his question is why cures for disease and free
Oh.
energy devices are banned under a corporation disguised as government. And Devin brings this up. So they are allowed to create law that actually gives preferential treatment to their corporate business partners and their private public partnership. They have been allowed to do this for quite some time, but in 1874, the Supreme Court ruled on a bunch of cases called the slaughterhouse cases. And basically what it was is a bunch of slaughterhouses in Louisiana had their permits taken away. Their butchers had their permits taken away to be a slaughterhouse, and the state of Louisiana gave a singular permit out to one slaughterhouse and created a monopoly. That slaughterhouse was grotesque, and they were actually like very grossly cutting up pigs and then throwing the pigs into the local river, which was then giving people like serious diseases downriver. And so the butchers who had their permits taken away actually sued all the way up to the Supreme Court and said, hey, this is a violation of my 14th Amendment right. I have the right to be permitted and to do my business. And the Supreme Court said, absolutely not. The 14th Amendment can only be enforced at the federal level, not the state level. And that is still enforced. By the way, this ruling has never been overturned. And that the government is allowed to permit to and not permit to whichever corporation they so desire. And they are also allowed to exempt them from their own regulations. So a regular butcher who was a slaughterhouse, who was butchering pigs and didn't follow the appropriate hygienic practices, could be shut down. But if they gave a permit to their preferred slaughterhouse and then the slaughterhouse asked for an exemption and they granted it, it's perfectly legal. So now these governments are working in private-public partnership with all of these corporations in what I can only describe as extreme fascism, where they are working to enact basically like environmental tyranny together. A great example of that would be like, climate change and the need to have electric cars and the need to have CO2, factories that convert CO2 and all of these things. It is all a money-making scheme. The only reason why climate change exists to begin with is because the government has exempted their own public and private partnerships from the regulations that they created and are supposed to enforce. So we have, for example, a public-private partnership with oil companies in which there is no way they are ever going to give up their multi-billion-dollar monopoly over energy. Right. And then you have somebody like Dan, who's a quiet guy who's just trying to make the world a better place. He's like, holy crap, I understand how to turn water into energy, and we can actually use this to, make our cars go, make airplanes go, the whole 9 yards. So he goes and he tries to get a permit for it, but the government is already in a private public partnership with somebody else, and they decided that they just want this monopoly. So they're going to deny the ability to regulate this new product. So this is actually why the market has become so stagnant, and also why the market is being pushed towards like transhumanism, because the only thing that they're actually going to allow to come out as new and innovative is technology that is going to help them instill their transhumanistic medical tyranny. That's what is happening here. So government they're not legitimate in any single way. They don't actually utilize their powers in any legitimate way. We're getting to the point where like you have a violation of your 14th Amendment right to be treated equally under the law, violated at every single moment. And the government grants itself immunity from any punishment for this. So like they have several different types of immunity. Like judges have absolute immunity. They're allowed to do whatever they want in the course of their public duties. A president has quote unquote absolute immunity during his duties. There's sovereign immunity and official immunity, and what I like to call uniform immunity. This is a new one that was granted to like health departments during COVID, where like a health department said, oh, this one health department is doing this, so now I should need to enact it in order for departments to be uniform in their policies across the state. So I call it uniform immunity. And so they just continuously grant themselves new immunities through the courts, which are practicing judicial review. Obviously, the Constitution doesn't have anything about immunities. It's actually quite the opposite. The Constitution says that you can actually arrest a senator at any other time besides when they're coming and going from the chambers. So you can't arrest a senator when they're coming and going from the chambers or when they're actually speaking in the House. But you can arrest them at any other time. And instead of having that be enforced, the courts granted immunity.
One thing I remember, somebody tried to sue Walt Disney, to which he replied, "You can't sue a god."
Yeah, they're untouchable. They're so untouchable, it's unreal. The only way that you're going to do anything to them is if you literally Luigi them. That is it. And I know that that sucks, and I'm not suggesting that anybody do that per
This is
se.
all satire, guys.
It is all hypothetical, philosophical, political theory.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, what she said.
But yeah,
Funny.
but that's what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a government so far out of control, completely paid for and bought by private business that isn't even really private. It's not private, you guys, because it exists only because of government approval. So it's actually like an extension of government. It's not separate from
Yeah.
government. Like we don't have any capitalism. I've never seen capitalism exist, not even just in my life, but in the entire history of humanity, have never seen a marketplace where there is no government interference. Even agorism and the gray market, it exists solely because the government exists and they're working around the government.
Yeah.
Black market, same thing. Red market, same thing. So we're dealing with government interference all the time in every interaction that you possibly can imagine. And they're doing that on behalf of their private public partnerships. So
Here's a
That-
good
no.
one. Go ahead, Devin.
No, yeah, that is just something that I want to just really reiterate too, because I think that a lot of people that is another religious belief that people have about this system. It's capitalism, right? Capitalism is this fairy tale word that nobody has actually really defined or has thought of. And anybody that's worth their salt and has studied the modern banking system and the primary dealers and the Federal Reserve and how all these things function can very easily see that we have either fascism or corporate socialism, and you can kind of use those things interchangeably sometimes. And
That
like
would be- yeah.
the biggest thing too, and this is just the funniest thing about all of this, right? It's the fact that the entirety of our economy right now is being backstopped by the Federal Reserve. Okay, like the Federal Reserve and the fact that we've like permitted the central bank this very obscure right to create debt out of nowhere. That is the reason why we have our economy. Okay, the notes that your money, it is a Federal Reserve note because it is a bill that because it's a part of a debt obligation, right? So this entire system is based on debt, and it is created by debt, right? And the people that have the monopoly on debt are the federal government and the primary dealer banks, who are now basically interchangeable. So, you know,
yes,
to even
and
say that we
they're
have any
creating
free market is
they're
insane.
they're creating debt for you. They're creating wealth for themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, they're taking the wealth with the debt they're creating, essentially.
Correct. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. You know, the whole way that they're even able to print money is by telling people who want to invest in federal debt, these slaves are going to make you about $60,000 a year, guys.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to do. So if you want to buy this debt, I guarantee you these slaves will make you 60 grand a year. And they're like, okay.
And
Or
Let me
not 60 grand a year, 60 over their lifetime. And they're like, yeah, that sounds like a real good plan. I'll buy this debt.
and like, I want to explain the mechanism too, because I want it to have people, I want it to have in people's heads, right? So when the government taxes you, right, through it's through income tax, and they get their tax receipts into the TGA, okay, the TGA then auctions out, okay, a bunch of debt to the primary dealer banks at auctions they have every few months, okay, and they sell, different treasuries at different maturities, okay. That's basically the creation of the debt, and then the interest is also the tax receipts coming in as well. So we are fronting the treasury's ability to pay interest, and that interest is going back to the banks. It is a literal circular process of the
Yes.
banks buying the treasuries, us paying interest to the banks, and it is literally that. And without taxes, the interest wouldn't be able to be fronted on the debt, which would make the debt invaluable. And
Yes.
that's a big part of the equation. And that's what you were saying, right? It's literally, hey, you got $60,000 per schmuck right here that we can basically suck out of them from wealth. And that is the mechanism. It's through the treasury market, and it's through
Yes,
the
it is.
TGA, and it's cycling. That's literally
Yes.
the circle. That's how it
Absolutely.
works.
I
It's
mean,
that
this
simple.
didn't exist until 1913, right?
Yeah, no, and it
And it
didn't go
didn't exist
exponential
until
till
there was
1980.
and then there didn't exist until there was a fake report.
Yeah.
Now we all know about fake reports here nowadays because they can't help themselves. They have a fake report for everything. But back in 1913, it was unheard of to have an actual fake report
Yeah.
with nothing to actually back up what they're saying about the dollar and how we need to have a Federal Reserve and we need to have an income tax. That is just completely made up. It's kind of like saying, butter and tallow from beef is really bad for
Well,
you. You need to have seed oils. And
The,
you
the
know what I'm
funniest part,
saying?
the funniest part about all that time is they were justifying the Federal Reserve with all the currency shocks that were happening, because all the banks had their own independent currencies, and and the funny part about that is because the banks were having currency shock supplies because they were lending like maniacs,
Yes.
right? So the Federal Reserve was basically the enabler to start up the 1920 up into the
Yes, it
1930s
was.
depression, right?
Yes,
It
it
wasn't
was.
a coincidence that right after we basically permit this institution to allow banks to spend into infinity, to an unknown capacity that we've ever had before in human history, we then also create the biggest financial crisis in human history as well.
Yes.
Only 17 years out from when we create the
Oh,
institution.
I know.
It's
No, I
awful.
mean,
You might
and
It's so funny.
they do this cycle on a regular basis. And why do they do this cycle on a regular basis? It's because these crises, these depressions, they actually accumulate their real wealth during these
absolutely.
times.
And it
Yeah,
Think about
permits
it.
more capacity to deregulate.
Yes.
It's more deregulation each time.
Exactly. So then you have, like, for example, in the Great Depression, you had Oklahomans who were they could not grow a damn thing and their cows were eating dirt.
Yeah.
And so a bank would come up to them and say, hey, I'm going to buy this from you, but I'm only going to give you like $12 or $20 for it. And then the people are like, what am I going to do with that? And then they're like, walk to California. So they sell their land for $20. And then these people walk on foot from Oklahoma to California in like 1931. And they get to California and it's beautiful and it's green. And they're like, wow, I get to be a farmer out here. This is amazing. No, you don't. You get to live in squalor next to a sewage pipe, and you will get to be paid 40 cents a day to be a farmer out here. You don't have any more money anymore, and you're stuck here in California. And so, like, again, this is all planned for their friends.
Yeah.
It's all
Absolutely.
a plan. It's all a strategy, and we just keep dealing with it. So, like, Doge, I noticed there was one more question. How
Yeah.
Doge is good. Doge is good because they're actually showing that people should not have faith in government. It is technically good. It's also technically legal. So Elon Musk, actually, his position was created through an executive order created by Obama.
Mhm.
And then Donald Trump came through and redefined and renamed that authority, that department, and then put Elon Musk in charge of it. He's doing exactly what the department was created to do back in 2012. So as far as I'm concerned, there's really no legal issue with what Elon Musk is doing. I love what Elon Musk is doing right
Yes, me
now.
too.
That's
Just
great.
right now. I gotta say, just right now, I love what he's doing. I think it's phenomenal. The more that he constructs the bureaucracy, the happier that I am. It's when we get to that point where he's deconstructing, and now he's going to implement that medical tyranny.
I was going to say, like, what's one negative of it?
And that's really where I'm going to speak out. So, but yeah, no, I still mock him a little bit. I've never been a huge fan of Elon Musk, but as somebody who is a Scrum Master and who actually implements agility into my project management, Elon Musk is by far the most qualified person to implement agility and lean government in the country, in the world. I don't know. So agility is basically, it's Scrum. There's several different forms where you can implement agility into your practices and your teamwork. And basically it's what technological companies have been doing to provide us with these amazing inventions, right? And so he did this with Twitter. And he's doing it with government. And implementing lean government is a pretty good idea, but I'm not going to be happy with what they replace it with, essentially.
Right.
So, but as of right now, yeah, no, I'm enjoying it immensely. It's really nice to watch.
And I want to add one thing too. Continuing the lean government, the fact that the precedent, okay, and I'm young, but still, right? Like just the precedent, the fact that Elon Musk was in the White House, okay, talking to the executive branch saying, hey, we need to reconsider deficit spending. The fact that anybody was even in there, right? It was like the only person for the past like 12 years, it's been Ron Paul and like 2 other senators maybe that has been talking about deficit spending. And now we have someone who's been put in charge of a extremely powerful agency with lots of capability who is now talking about, I mean, Elon Musk, you know, I'm the same thing. I'm a very big critic. I think eventually Tesla will go down being a massive financial crime. But at the end of the day, just that precedent alone, he deserves lots of credence. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, you've got to think about it, perhaps from his standpoint. If the money is worthless, he's no longer a billionaire.
Yep.
That's true.
And that's
Profit.
just the bottom line.
Very selfless. He's destroying himself. He's the biggest benefactor, kind of.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely. He has a vested interest in his children to ensure that they are not living in squalor. And that is legitimately where I see him coming from. I don't see him coming from the position of like, you know, I want to control government and be a god. I think he's actually like, you guys have fucked up our money supply and I'm not going to be a billionaire anymore. So I need to get this shit straight so that I can leave here and go on and be like a trillionaire. Okay, guys? That's how I see it.
We want to hear from you. Haven't said much today. I know we've had a full house, but let's hear your thoughts. No, it's fine.
Oh yeah, no. I don't really have many thoughts. I mean, I'm right where you guys are at with Elon. I don't really like him very much. I never really liked him as a person but yeah, the stuff that he's doing is great, and what he's uncovering and bringing out to the public is just giving ammunition to a lot of the things that people like us have been saying for years. So I'm really excited to see what happens. You know,
when I wrote about agility and lean government back in 2023, I wrote a little article about it, and I was like, you know, still like starry-eyed, like Congress needs to do this, right? I was so naive about it. It was absurd.
I was like it too. Yeah.
I'm laughing at myself. Self-actualization. I looked pathetic, right? And Elon Musk and Donald Trump truly figured out a genius way to do this. Like, I didn't know about the fucking Department of Digital Services that was created under
that was interesting
back in 2012.
Very
because, like, why would I care about that? You know what I'm saying? So to see them actually go through, they know what they are doing, and so does Big Balls. Okay, I want to point this out. These kids are really, really smart when it comes to artificial intelligence and when it comes to implementing agility. That's why Elon Musk chose them. And they're awesome. I'm literally watching them dismantle their grandparents and great-grandparents' money laundering scheme.
God bless them.
And I'm like, yes, God bless you.
God bless them.
Bless you.
Literally.
Okay, because we didn't do any of this shit. We've been sitting here like, how the fuck do we solve this? And Elon Musk and Donald Trump figured out the solution. Now, I don't think that they're very altruistic about it, but I'm
They're
going to
probably
take
gonna
what
get
I can
killed.
get. And also, I like to watch liberals cry. I really do like to
Yeah,
watch liberals
that's
cry.
a
It's
guilty
like a
They're
pleasure.
pathetic. They're
yeah,
pathetic
no, it's a guilty
humans.
pleasure of mine. I really feel like they're it's a small group, maybe 25% of the country. It's definitely not the whole country by any stretch of the imagination, who actually wants to kill off most Americans just because of our political persuasions. So that's actually why I have an issue with leftists. I have heard from Democrats for a very long time that they would kill me if it was for the greater good. I mean, they've said it right to my face. I am directly quoting them when I say that. They have said it more than once to me. So unfortunately, when I talk to a Democrat or a leftist and they kind of like trigger me a little bit with what they say, like, I don't believe that people who aren't vaccinated should get medical help. Dude, that is the epitome of Nazism. And
Yeah,
I don't mean like Nazi
And
they don't know what
supremacy.
they
Germans
don't know what
versus
fascism
Jews.
means.
What I mean is like the philosophical
Mhm.
idea of Nazism. A group of people is not as good as you and they need to be eradicated per se. Not saying that it's not justified, not saying that they don't believe it's not justified. I'm just saying it's probably not a good idea for us as humans to believe that a specific group of people needs to die because of what they think. And so until they start implementing what they think into what they do, and on my opinion about that, that comes down to an individual choice. So we're talking about religiosity and how people come together with their group think. But in the end, it is only your consciousness and your responsibility for the choices that you make. You can try and place it off onto somebody else, but if you actually go and shoot somebody in the head, your grandma who told you to do it because she was super angry at that 79-year-old man and finally wanted him taken out, and you did it for your grandma because you love your grandmammy like so very much, right? Like that's the end of it. You made that choice. So yeah, I think that leftists actually did a really good job of othering other people during the last 5 years and saying that we weren't actually human, and then silencing us and censoring us to make sure that we continue to be dehumanized. I really don't want to see that happen more. And I feel like that is just going to become what we are in the pendulum swing of the in-group, out-group paradigm. We're just getting more into the fundamentalism. We are definitely in smack in the middle of the United States of America's decay. So
Yeah.
and
It's not going to look the same in 4 years.
economically.
I don't think it will.
No, it
We're
won't. I'm
peaked.
excited.
What do you mean? This is a liberal golden age.
Liberal
Look at all the
golden
equality. Look at all the social equity. Look at the social equity.
Social equity. There's so
social
much
equity.
social. Hold on. There is so much social equity going on here. I had an interview with a bank like 2 years ago, and they literally told me like, "Yeah, we know that you're a woman, but you're white."
You're white, and you're
In
a piece
the
of shit.
interview.
And you have no culture. Your food.
I have
tastes
no
bad.
culture. I'm
Your
obviously
food
just a
tastes
redneck
bad.
hillbilly, like to have sex with my cousins and
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
So
No,
Josh
it's
is
true.
like,
You're
"Did she just
disgusting.
say that?"
You
Yeah,
have
no, I
European
have
ancestors. You know,
Yeah, no, I have
you're not
this thing.
colored, so
That's
you don't
right.
deserve anything.
That's
you know?
right. Okay. And I've come from a family of privilege just by
Yep.
literally growing up in a house without any foundation.
Exactly.
Jeez.
No, we have to pay for the sins of our forefathers.
I
Our
don't
yeah.
even know if
forefathers
I don't
need to
even
pay
think
for
that
our
my
sins.
forefathers did anything, you know? As a matter of fact, my great great uncle is Alexander Berkman. He is Emma Goldman's boy toy. Okay?
Oh wow.
Oh no.
My great grandmother is Rosa Parks.
Oh,
Uh,
I don't know why it was doing that. It was kind of
Yeah, I
messing
don't
with us,
know.
though.
We're starting to
Yeah.
get an EMP'd now.
Probably.
We are.
But we are coming up on the 2 hour
Yeah, we
mark.
should
It's been
probably-
crazy. So
Yeah.
I know
Gotta-
she's got kids.
Here,
that
since
she's
she's
gonna
not
get into.
back, I'm gonna use the bathroom.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I don't know. That did it kicked us off for a minute.
Yeah, it kicked me. But after I rejoined, it seemed fine.
Yeah, that's
Everything
weird.
just the same thing probably just happened to her. Probably delayed a little bit.
Who knows?
The markets are doing some. I just made a lot of money. The markets are doing insane shit right now.
Hey, there you go.
Like, I actually
Okay.
can't believe they just squeezed that.
Yeah, I
hard.
don't know. It did that to all of us, but like I
Yeah.
said, we're coming up on the 2 hour mark, and it went by really fast. So
Sorry.
oh no, we're fine. I've been blown away by everything you had to say, but let's see. Devin, Prophet, do you guys have anything else to add before I let her close us out?
No. Buy the dip. That's all I'd buy the dip. You know.
Buy your bulks, bulk bullets, bulk seeds.
Yeah.
Bulk
True.
Bielefelders, which
True.
are a type of chicken.
Yeah. What about you, Prophet? Oh, can't hear
Oh,
you.
your
for
mic's
some
muted.
reason.
Your mic's muted.
You might have to click on the little arrow and change it. Like,
Oh, how about now?
there we go. Yeah, now we can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay, I just want to say I appreciate how pragmatic your perspective is and how involved you are actually. A lot of people aren't that involved and they can't really speak on, that side of it. So I really enjoyed hearing what you had to say and, all of your opinions on everything. So yeah, thank you for coming on. I really
Been a
really
fun
enjoyed it.
guest. Yeah.
Thank
then-
you guys for having
and
me
then-
on.
Also, I would say the same thing as Prophet if you were a woman of color and you didn't have it so easily.
Seriously.
You just,
It's
it's
not
not
I
that
hate to say
impressive.
it, but I do use my face to market anarchy. I'm
Yeah.
like, if you like my face,
No, it's the food too.
go overthrow the government, and I promise you that I will feed you an exorbitant amount of whatever kind of food you want. Seriously, I'm willing to sacrifice my life to become the priestess of overthrowing the U.S.
So
government.
let me get this
In
straight.
a
We
video
overflow
game,
the
theoretically.
we overthrow the government, and you will give us food. Is that how the deal is?
You got it.
That's tempting.
Yeah, you got
All
it.
we need
That's
is for
a
people to
deal.
go hungry.
Urban has seen my food. He knows.
Yeah.
I am a
He's a really good
well
cook.
known for cooking
Yeah.
some immaculate food. So back in like it was like 2009, 2010, I started to have a really bad kidney problems. It turns out to be something that I was born with, and I have a malformation of my kidneys. And you guys, as you can imagine, I was a gigantic nerd in school. So I graduated with 2 degrees. I was, working at banks at the time. I then worked at a university, and I got really, really sick, and I couldn't work anymore, and I couldn't be the goody two shoes that I always thought I was going to grow up to be. So I ended up in therapy for like 3 weeks, and they told me like, figure out a way to be productive, which I had been told my entire life. So I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I should probably just go be fucking productive instead of crying about the fact that I can't go to my job. So that's where the cooking came into play. And I started learning and teaching myself how to cook profusely. And one of the tricks for that is actually I started looking at little old ladies' comments underneath recipes. They got it going on, you guys.
Wow,
I'm
that's a
telling
good
you.
idea.
Okay, they've got it going on. So I would look at like 12 or 15 different recipes and all of the different comments from the little old biddies who were willing to give their little golden nuggets, right? And so that's how I ended up cooking. And I've moved all over the country. So I had lots of friends and family who were like, I miss your cooking. You need to cook something for me. And so that's how I opened up my business. 7 years, 5-star, internationally renowned online bakery and confectionery. And then I closed in 2021 and became a nerdy strategic consultant and have been doing that ever since. But I still cook passionately for my friends and family. And obviously people yell at me online on Facebook on my page if I don't cook. Like I'll actually get people in my messages like, have you died? Is something going on here?
That's
Because
funny.
like I came here for the food. Okay. And all you're doing is talking shitty politics.
Oh, God.
Show me that amazing tomahawk steak that you made a week ago.
I mean, you played it up nice. It's your plating, and it looks great.
Yeah, no, I've always been really good at food photography. Probably not the rest of photography. Kind of terrible at it, actually. So
we can make do with that.
Yeah, no, because I love food. It's amazing, and I think that food is one of the greatest blessings that God has bestowed onto mankind. Like, and
Pretty
you have
pretty
to
true.
eat it. You have to eat it 2, maybe 3 times a day. You got to eat the food, right? Why not
Mhm.
make it like utterly delicious and almost like the very reason that you're alive to experience Earth. So
Mm,
that's how I think of food. If it's below that type of perfection, I probably shouldn't be eating it.
fair. That's fair. Guys,
Fair
it's
So
enough.
been
I'm open to it. Like I said, if you show up here and you show me a picture and be like, hey, this was me. I was in a garbage bag ghillie suit, an urban ghillie suit.
In a video game, in GTA
I
5,
sat
in
outside
GTA
Fauci's.
5,
Yeah,
in a
no, I
roleplay
sat
server,
outside Fauci's house in this garbage ghillie
in the
suit on
GTA 5
Thursday
roleplay
morning
server.
when his garbage
yes,
was
Hmm.
supposed to be picked
yes.
up, and I picked him off. And I just want you to know this, Rachel. And I'm going to be like, sir, you come right on inside, and I am
Oh
going to cook
shit!
you a fine meal. A
Yeah.
fine meal.
All satire, guys.
Oh, of course.
Satire. Yes,
Satire.
Poisoned with
absolutely.
irony to the max.
Yes, see, we're just demonstrating irony poisoning.
In a video
Guys,
game.
Yes.
guys, this has been a great
William
episode.
Shakespeare right here is what's
Oh,
happening.
God. You've been an eccentric, exciting guest, and we were glad to have you on. We're glad that we got it rescheduled. We'll do another one with you in the future.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's been great, and this time has just flown by. You've given us a lot of information to think about, but it's been amazing. So we're thankful to have you here. Um, but any closing words? We'll let you close out, and anything that you want to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say, gentlemen, it's fun, man. I'd love to smoke some weed with you all and really
Okay, yeah.
talk some serious shit without cameras investigating us.
Right.
Yeah.
And watching over us and determining what we're going to do in the future. Right
Yeah.
now, there's a huge alarm going off. Like, there's a 90% accuracy rating with Rachel. She looks like she wants to commit violence. That's what the AI is doing right now.
I mean,
It's probably very accurate, but I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for having me on here. Thank you for giving an opportunity to my followers to actually be
Yeah.
able to ask some questions and get
Yeah.
those answered. I really like that. I enjoyed this
Anytime.
interaction. I hope to come back on soon.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
we've
Good
enjoyed it.
conversation.
Guys, thank you for tuning in. Thanks to everyone on Facebook, on Twitter, on we haven't really have anyone on Rumble or YouTube, but we appreciate everyone who's tuned in, all of the people who have viewed this and enjoyed it. But with that being said, guys, we wish you the best. Take care and peace.
Bye bye.